Here in the Deep South, being a good neighbor often means a casserole when the baby's born or when the loved one passes, a wave to the car passing by, and maybe a friendly, "How's your mama?" at the grocery store. But real neighbor love, the kind that holds space, crosses lines, and honors someone's full humanity, especially when they don't look like you, vote like you, or believe like you, that's a little bit harder. That's sacred work. Welcome to You Don't Know, the podcast where we sit with the holy tension of loving the people who think we don't belong here. In this episode, I sat down with Reverend Charlotte, a minister who has spent the last 12 years serving in North Georgia, a place where women pastors are still rare and progressive pulpits are even rarer. We talk proximity, power, protest, parenting, and why ministry in the Bible Belt often requires you to be both compassionate and tough as nails. We talk about showing up with our full, feminine, justice-seeking selves in systems that simply weren't built for us. Yet here we are. At the heart of our conversation is this question: what does it really mean to love your neighbor, especially when your neighbor believes differently than you? Pour yourself a nice cup of something, sit back, and let's commit the ultimate scandal: listening to a woman preach. So let's start with an intro.
Okay.
You're a woman and a reverend in the Deep South.
Mm-hmm.
Give us a little backstory. How did you get here?
Yeah. I was born and raised in Marietta. Okay. So this is my natural environment. And I was raised in the PCUSA church. And we had a married couple, a male-female married couple who led the congregation as co-ministers. Wow. So I grew up never thinking that women couldn't be in the pulpit. I wasn't necessarily drawn to that as a child or anything, but there was always an example of it. And so it wasn't a foreign concept for me. I didn't know how much of a taboo it was until I became one.
Yeah.
And then it was kind of like, oh, that's right, I forgot. There are so many folks who have never seen this before. And even coming into the doors of my congregation early on, there were people who showed up with their young daughters and were like, we wanted them to see this. It was important that they saw that a woman could be in this position. So that still happens from time to time. But going into ministry, my father was ill throughout my childhood. He had laryngeal cancer, and he passed away when I was 9. And you can imagine that's right around the age of enlightenment, in which kids really understand and start asking deeper questions about what is life, what is death, what are these kind of universal truths, if there are any kind of thing. And so I took my grief processing very seriously throughout that time and was filled with a lot of questions about the purpose of my father's suffering, and how that related to my understanding of what I'd always been told about God. And I'd had a couple who lived down the street from us who were so very generous with their time, with their love, with their resources for our family when we were going through this crisis. And they used to take me after school every day. And they were deeply Southern Baptist. And some of the things that they shared did not make sense to me. And so I just thought how interesting that there are such differences between us in this world, even in this little neighborhood, and that there are these things that I feel strongly I don't believe, that they so clearly do believe. So that kind of sent me on searching, and wound up going to school and not thinking I wanted to go into ministry. And
oh, really? Still?
Yeah. My undergraduate, I was a very strong atheist. I became a devout Buddhist in high school through my searching, studied, gave up meat. I'm still a vegetarian. And that kind of, I held on to that and studied it in undergrad, but thought I wanted to be a manuscript editor. And so majored in all of that and just kept taking coursework on the side because I was really interested in it. And then they were like, hey, you only need one more course to double major. So why don't you just double major? And but I was an atheist going through all of my education, including an independent study with our Presbyterian chaplain of the university, where she and I sat down and studied atheism through history and Freud and all of these really interesting subject work together, and did the wrestling together on two sort of opposite sides of the spectrum. And afterwards, I just really missed the intellectual stimulation of that environment. Found myself in a group where the group leader was also a very ardent atheist, but said, "Hey, have you ever checked out the Unitarian Universalist Church? Because I'm a member there." And I was just like, how do these two things fit together?
Yeah.
And I showed up and it was just instant. And I was like, oh, this is what a calling feels like.
Wow.
I showed up in the doors and I was like, I want to do this forever for the rest of my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us a little bit more, because it's pretty much Southern Baptist and non-denominational churches for the most part around here. I definitely grew up in that realm. Tell us what Unitarian Universalism is.
Yeah, so it's an intentionally pluralistic faith. It's two historic branches of Christianity. So you have Unitarianism, which the seeds of it go, all the way back to Jesus's time, essentially. Nicene Creed debated Unitarianism versus Trinitarianism.
Okay.
Right. And then Universalism, which is this, additionally, kind of the seeds of that were from around that era, in which they believed that Jesus died for all people, period. Didn't matter, well, do you say you believe this, or do you really believe this other thing? Or it didn't matter. That gift was given across the board.
Yeah.
You didn't have to do anything to earn it.
Yeah.
And so those two historic faiths merged in 1961 and became Unitarian Universalism, because much of their work, especially social gospel work, was identical. And so they merged their resources around the civil rights era so that they could make a difference. And became a kind of non-creedal, as I said, intentionally pluralistic faith at that point. Wrote their beliefs, their bylaws, all of those things during the merger. And so congregations around the U.S., there's like 550 of us, congregations. Wow. Mostly you'll find us up north in New England. Boston is our kind of headquarters. But if you walk into any UU congregation, you're going to find folks who identify as Christian, Jewish, Buddhist, atheist, Wiccan, Hindu, Muslim, any number of things.
Yes, yeah.
And the goal on that Sunday morning is that we come together, we worship together. Worship means lift up that which is worthy of acknowledging and honoring. And so we do that together, and we learn to expand our own spirituality, to challenge our preconceptions, to grow. We do that with curiosity at the forefront, open-mindedness, and then we serve one another in the world through our justice work. So in a nutshell, we kind of say Unitarians believed that people were too good to be damned, and Universalists believed that God was too good to damn people. Wow. So we don't believe in hell.
Yeah. So is all clergy of UU churches do consider themselves Christians?
No.
Okay.
No.
So it doesn't have to be just Christian.
No, absolutely not. We have a lot of varying faiths represented in our clergy. We're predominantly female. Our clergy are now at this point in history. Yeah.
Wow.
And so you will have all sorts of, we kind of say, the way I phrase it is, we're all Unitarian Universalists. This is the umbrella that we're under, but we have a grounding theology that is our personal theology. But our clergy do have to, through our process of ordainment, we have to be educated on all faith traditions. Yeah. So we can meet a pagan mother who's just lost her child and be able to help her grieve in her language of reverence. Or someone who is raised in the Catholic Church those rituals are deeply meaningful to them still, but they don't necessarily align with the theology. How do we provide them, a wedding that feels meaningful to them in their language of reverence? Yeah. So whether we have a grounding theology of, Buddhism or Christianity or Judaism or whatever, humanism, we all kind of are skilled enough to be able to check our selves in that moment and attend to the needs of the individual that we're working with.
It sounds a lot like chaplains.
100%.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
We're required to go through one unit of clinical pastoral education as a chaplain before we can be ordained.
Wow.
So we know how to do that work.
Yeah.
But yes, that's exactly right.
It's really beautiful. It's just like humanity is welcome and wanted.
Yes.
I love it. It's beautiful. Okay. I didn't know any of that background. This may not go in, and I don't know that this fits in here, but so many people here specifically believe the ultimate end goal of religiosity is to make sure that people go to heaven when they die.
Sure.
Can you tell how you believe differently?
Yeah. Great question, by the way. Yeah, we Unitarian Universalists tend to believe that this world is what we make it. Heaven is here if we want it to be so. Hell is here if we want it to be so. So my ultimate goal is not, we're only ever guaranteed this life, right? We have firm beliefs about what we think and what we've been told. And some might say what we know, but we have firm beliefs about that. What we know is what we're experiencing right this second. And so if this is all we are guaranteed, then my goal is to make this heaven for you, for your family, for your friends, for myself, for my family, my congregation, all of those things. So I don't concentrate on what will happen when I die. I concentrate on what my legacy will be here to other people, and how it will have hopefully bent the arc of justice.
Yeah. Okay. So have you ever felt any tension between your theology and the dominant religious culture here? And if so,
Every day.
how did you navigate that?
Every day. You know, I have 3 younger children, 13, 8, and 4. And I am raising them to be curious about spirituality, to listen to their own inner voice, and to negotiate the sources of information that they receive on a daily basis. So if my child grows up and is like, I am an ardent Christian, I'll be like, I am so happy that you have discovered that for yourself. And if my child grows up and says, oh, I'm an atheist, I want nothing to do with the congregation that you serve, I don't, whatever it might be, I'll say, this is you practicing your right. And I honor that journey in you. And so where it comes kind of rubs, if you will, for me is very specifically as a parent, trying to keep that openness and that freedom of experience spiritually for my children when we're in a culture that tells them that they are evil if they do not believe in Christ specifically. That, you can't sign them up for Gainesville sports because they're going to be prayed to every single game. The opening day is going to have a big in Jesus' name prayer. The school board meeting is going to meet in Jesus' name. The teachers are going to potentially have a conversation that's going to challenge that separation of church and state in that institution. And so, they're constantly promoting Christian activity and belief in public areas. And so my goal as a parent is to educate my children about the law, about what I feel is spiritual coercion, and their rights regarding that, and to remind them that just because the majority says that something is right does not always mean, as we well know, that is actually right.
Right.
And that it is their right to make a decision for themselves what they believe.
Yeah, yeah.
And for me personally, happens all the time when we go to the hospital and they insist on praying in Jesus' name over you, the physician who has power over you in that moment, when they're going to have a surgery on you, the surgeon, and they're insisting that you pray because it makes them feel better. That's a violation of my theology as well. You can pray, absolutely pray. Please pray, but do not force that upon me, and I will not force that upon you. And just the waters that we swim in, it is everywhere. It's in our laws, it's on our billboards, it's in our school system, it's in the way that so many of my male colleagues that are interfaith colleagues interact with me. It is everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. Especially as a parent, I can imagine it being really... Because you can fight your own fights how you want, but then when your children are exposed to it, it changes everything.
It's true. And navigating what is worth leveraging this for and what is not. And I always just think about the parents who work 3 jobs and can't show up to school board meetings or have this conversation with the teacher because, maybe English is their second language and they don't know how to engage this risky subject in a way that won't put them at further risk.
Right.
And so what is my voice also speaking for beyond my own children?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Let's talk about you being a lady pastor around these parts.
Yeah.
What has surprised you most about leading as a woman in the South? Give us the good, bad, and the ugly.
Ooh. The good is that, as I mentioned before, there is this opportunity to speak to young women, girls, or and frankly, boys or gender non-binary folks, and say, like, this may not have been how you were raised to view women in a position of leadership and authority to a certain extent and power, but this is capable. And not only that, but hopefully this is an example of leading with compassion, leading with grace, leading with all of these other things, and affirming in them, hey, I am just like you. You can do this if you want to do this.
Yeah.
So that is a lot of the good. The good is that the things that I would consider my greatest strength in ministry are the things that make me most feminine, if you will. And the bad, of course, is that you have a ton of folks who believe that your existence is evil because you are a woman speaking in this position or wearing a clergy collar or a stole. And so you can't get past that and to humanize yourself if immediately you're met at the door with, you're actually a threat to me and my belief system. And so I can't even be around you. Because when you're a woman who's a minister, you often are going to it's going to be automatically assumed that you're going to be progressive. And so, you're wearing it. Like, unlike a male colleague of mine, who that would not necessarily be assumed as soon as they look at you.
Yeah.
And so, having folks in the hospital setting when I was a chaplain, I would walk in the door and they'd say, nope, you're a woman.
Oh, God.
Nope. You're of the devil because you're speaking the gospel as a woman who believes that they have the right to do that. So, so there's that.
What do you, I feel like you have to have spent your whole life fighting and trying to prove your intentions and who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Certainly the hospital's not, yes, it isn't that's just when you say, all right, I'll be happy to get a colleague for you, a different colleague for you, because that's not the place to argue, right?
Yes, yeah.
But it does feel that way. Intentionally choosing to move back to the South because I did my Master's of Divinity up in Boston. So choosing to come back down was an intentional decision to accept that.
Oh, wow.
Because if we all moved away, right, what does that leave in that void?
Yep. Wow. Okay. And the ugly, any ugly other than
Yeah, there's like the sexism and weird body stuff when you're on display in front of a whole bunch of people preaching, because in a way that they wouldn't speak to men or male presenting people who are in that position, they will feel comfortable to say that to you. They will talk about your body and, what they're noticing with your body and, how your hair looks today and, whatever things that feel very adjacent or other to what your job is doing there. People feel very comfortable saying that to women, and they wouldn't feel so comfortable saying that to men.
Yeah.
So that's probably the ugly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you were saying earlier too, some of your characteristics that make you feel like you're the best at what you do are feminine, often feminine. What are some of those characteristics?
Yeah. I would say it is super stereotypical for me to label these as specifically feminine, but they are generally,
yes,
yeah. So I would specifically say working in a group environment, I think, very well in listening and taking wisdom from all sorts of sources, and instead of feeling like I have to have the answer and be in charge and know all the things, it is perfectly acceptable for me to say, that is a really good, I don't know, what is your answer to that? Because I'd really like to learn from you. And I think the compassion part of it is significant. I always say, not only am I the kind of spiritual protector, if you will, over the congregation, looking out for their best interests spiritually, but I am also someone who is supposed to fall in love with them as a congregation. I can't do the work that I need to do to earn their trust and to lead them further into their mission and vision unless they feel loved. And I've never heard male clergy talk about it that way. That they may, but I've never heard it.
Me either.
An example of it.
And I was just sitting here thinking how refreshing it would be to hear a man in any leadership position speak in that kind of way. I totally see what you're saying there. What advice would you give to other women who feel called to lead in places or systems that weren't built for them?
I would say have a really good grounding group of people around you. My friends are essential to my well-being, and they are often the folks when I'm saying, I don't think I can do this, they're saying like, oh, I know you can, and have a great therapist that you can get all that stuff out with. I think having more examples of that makes it easier. Being able to reach out to your female colleagues and say, gosh, how did you navigate this challenging issue? Sourcing your power as women in this role is really important. Having each other's backs is very important. And not feeling threatened has been essential. So I show up in spaces and I do not cower. I show up and I sit at the table and I demand that my space be made, just like I would make that space for anyone else at that table. And so you have to feel a deep sense of self-worth and capability in order to do that work. And so I think a lot of that comes from me knowing that I'm hopefully modeling that for other people. But I'd say grounding yourself in other people outside of your work who know you and who could speak life into you or breathe fire into you if you need it, or check you on days when you are maybe really challenged or need a new insight. I think that's essential for everybody, but specifically for women.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. Side note. Do you know what you are on the Enneagram?
Yes, I'm a 7.
You're 7. Me too. Oh, I love it so much.
That was a real enlightenment. I really enjoyed the process of figuring that out.
Yes.
And learning about it. I was like, this is very true.
Yeah, we talk about it a lot on this podcast. Yeah, so that's why I had to ask.
Gotcha.
It wasn't in the notes, but I had to ask. Okay, on to ministry in the Bible Belt.
Yeah.
What does loving your neighbor look like in a region that is often divided along lines of race, religion, gender, and class?
Yeah. If you had asked me this in 2016, I would have a different answer, I think. I think it becomes more challenging when your neighbor is insistent upon devaluing the humanity of other people. It becomes different to love them. That love takes a different tone. But what it means is leveraging your power. It means saying, what do I have that I can stand to lose to honor your humanity, to raise attention or fight for your right to exist, your freedom, your family, whatever it might be. It means being there not just to enjoy their culture or their food or their company, but being there when they need you to leverage things and to pick up the pieces or to hold them when they're suffering. And for those who are making decisions that create environments for such devaluing of humanity to take place, it means speaking with love and power. And I talk about power a lot because we all have it to some degree, right? And when and how do we use it for good is really central to what I think we're culturally needing to talk about right now. And so that means when someone makes a comment to you that makes you feel uncomfortable, that is racist or homophobic or transphobic or whatever it might be, you can look at them and say, I don't speak like that. I don't welcome conversation like that in my presence. I'm going to challenge what you're saying. If you want to have that conversation, I'd like to have that conversation with you. I've said numerous times, I'm not sure what made you think I'm a safe person to say that to. And that can be very uncomfortable when it's your family, when it's your next door neighbor, when it's your boss, when it's, any number of people, being able to love them enough and love your other neighbors enough to hold them accountable for what they're actually saying in that moment. So a little bit about me. I am born and raised here, very Southern Baptist. I definitely have changed absolutely almost everything that I believe about everything. And all the spaces around me, family, friends, neighbors, people I grew up with, everybody is still the way I used to be. So there's a little bit of transition there. And it was a hard shift, I think, to go from how I was taught to love your neighbor, which is essentially love the people already around you, to loving people without power and the marginalized. That was once I made that shift, it's like very difficult to go back then and love your neighbor with power who's misusing their power. What do you do with that? I felt like a lot of people are in that space. There's just a lot of like anger, but like righteous anger of like, why are you hurting people who are already so low? Why is that your end goal? And you're doing it under the guise of love and Jesus' name. And yet you're throwing stones. You're trying to take people down. So it's a very weird, paradoxical place to be. And I'm glad you addressed that. I love the way you said that. I mean, and where the rubber hits the road, at least for my faith, one of our guiding principles is the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And so that hits the road when someone is misusing their power to harm others. And your ability and requirement to still see them as human, to see them as someone who's wounded, who's hurting, who is in need of something that they are not able to get.
Scared and fearful.
And so to be able to love them through that.
Yeah.
Not keep them there.
Yes, yeah.
Love them through it.
Yeah.
And there are some of us who have the energy and resources and power to do that, and some who do not. And so if you are one of those people, you are called to do the work, to immerse yourself. I don't really have a ton of marginalized identities in my body and the trauma that exists within those communities. So I am called to enter those spaces and have those conversations with people that ideally would transform in some minor way their lives and their outlook on their neighbors.
I love that. I've personally seen you show up to marches and protests, something I'd never see any of my pastors do growing up.
Really?
Never. What's your motivation for participating in community in this way?
Yeah, it's just living my faith out loud, right? Living it publicly. I can preach all I want from a pulpit, but if I don't get my butt in gear and show up to those spaces, it means very little. So, if my goal is to motivate my congregation to act more justly, to fight for equality or mercy or whatever we're advocating for or protesting against, the best way to do that is to be alongside them and show up and use that power to address it and use your presence to address it. And oftentimes, there is such a thing as the power of the caller, right? You show up in a space and your caller and it changes. Sometimes it's more challenging because people have a significant amount of religious trauma, and just seeing you in that space makes them think you're there for a particular reason. But it also transforms people to say, oh my gosh, now that I've heard you speak publicly about this topic that I feel so passionately about, I know that there is a space that exists in this world religiously for me now. And so it's not about recruiting folks, but that does seem to happen as a kind of side thing. So it really is about, do I want my neighbors to know that I love them only in the dark? Or do I want them to see me loving them in the light in front of everyone?
What's one holy moment you'll never forget from your time here? Something that's reminded you that this work matters?
From the last 12 years in Gainesville?
Well, yes. So
area?
we haven't touched on that yet, but you're leaving Gainesville.
Yeah.
You're leaving North Georgia.
Yeah.
So looking back on your time here,
There are almost too numerous to name. There's a song by Peter Mayer called Holy Now, and the whole idea of it is deconstructing your theology and realizing that everything is holy now. So I'd say certainly in the moments where, we rushed to open our congregation for an emergency warming center during the last two deep freezes this year and the year before, and seeing people come in and realize that they didn't have to compromise a part of themselves to find safety, that we were not asking for anything from them, that we were just showing up with a hot meal, and seeing that of them finding people that they could just have a casual conversation with. That was a sacred moment. I think the work that I've done in chaplaincy has had innumerable moments of sacredness, serving in hospice. And then I served in Athens, at Athens Regional as the palliative care chaplain for many years. And almost every day there was something sacred and holy that happened, that transpired with our patients and family members or our staff members there. I think probably my favorite is bringing 2 children into the world while I've been here in Gainesville, and watching my community love them so deeply. I find sacredness in my best friend and I's relationship in the way that she loves me and holds me in my weakest moments, and loves my children like her own, So those are just a smattering of kind of tip of the iceberg of that.
I love that. All right. looking forward and looking back, what do you hope the people you've led and loved here carry forward after you go?
I hope they carry forward courage. I hope they always feel my abiding love for them, wherever they are in the world, wherever I am in the world, knowing that I am cheering them on, knowing that I believe that they are good and worthy human beings who can do really hard things if they're called to in this world. And that so much of my ministry, I think, looking back, has been about decisive action for justice, that they can take that with them as an example and say, like, we've done this before. We can do it again. We can, in 2 seconds, we can make this decision that stands up for what we believe in, what our values are, and how we want to show up in the world. So I hope that sense of courage stays with them and love.
Yeah. And then as you go, and you're going to another southern city.
I am.
Nashville. What are you packing in your metaphorical suitcase as you head to your next chapter?
I'm really steeling myself with courage. Nashville's really in the thick of it right now, specifically with ICE. And it's making a lot of national news. And I am knowing a brief amount of the expectation that will be placed on my role in this position. And knowing the congregation that I am moving to, their history of service in the larger community, and yet not quite knowing the city yet. I am packing all of my courage. I'm packing, all of those ancestors who did hard things, who took a stand for something that they believed in, and I'm shoring myself up with it. And I am packing goodwill from my beloveds in the congregation that I served, because this has been a challenging time. I love them so much, and I have felt their love for 12 years. I am packing with me all of that love too, knowing that they wish me well, and with a purpose. I'm packing a purpose. This is my calling in life, to serve the cause of progressive religious spaces in the Southeast. And so I want to do justice to that calling.
And finally, do you have a parting blessing, benediction, or soapbox rant you want to leave us with?
Soapbox
We are all
rant.
ears. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. I don't have a blessing or a benediction to provide. What I have is warning is not right. It's going to get worse before it gets better. And I think it serves us in the long run to know that and to be prepared for that. To be prepared to be your most patient, your most loving, your most honorable, your most action-oriented, centered self through all of this. To tend to yourself, to tend to your beloveds, to remind yourself that there are reasons why we fight the good fight. And those are beautiful things like good food and good times, good memories, watching your children play, being able to raise them in an environment where they feel safe, hopefully. So don't say no to those opportunities in the meantime. Like, live the joy and like center yourself in that joy, because that's what you're fighting for everybody. So yeah, it's know you're not alone. My gosh, there are so many more people here who value what you value than you think. And it's really easy here to be feeling alone. Yeah. So may you find your people, may you find your community, and may you not close the doors to that. May you stay open and engage with the other, because we don't want to be siloed. We can't get through this without each other. So, so stay open, but also find your people.
Yeah.
because they're there.
Yeah. I think every single time I've run into somebody who realizes for whatever reason that we're kind of on the same page about something, they're like, there's more of us every single time.
Every time people walk into our congregation, it's like, oh God, okay. I didn't realize that existed. And that's how I felt when I found it, 20 plus years ago. Like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that I could ask these questions and be held in this way by a community who's doing the same work themselves.
You've been listening to You Don't Know, a Wayfind Collective podcast, where faith doesn't hide behind pulpits or politics. It welcomes the bold and the messy, and is always on the side of the vulnerable. Friends, hear us when we say, you are not alone. There are more of us out here asking the hard questions, wrestling with the tensions of this moment, and choosing again and again to stay in the work. Find your people, ground yourself, and put your boots on the pavement. A huge thank you to Reverend Charlotte for such a therapeutic conversation, and for continuing the good work of preaching, pastoring, and gently wrecking the patriarchy with rare grace, deep humility, and holy wisdom. If this conversation lit a little fire in you, pass it on. And if you want to keep the sparks flying, you can fund the flame at wayfindco.com. Also on our website, you'll find a page dedicated to this episode, where you can hear more of Reverend Charlotte's brilliance. Produced and edited by Lindsay Migliori and Deanna West. Graphics by Rebecca Williamson. Website design by Bliss and Tell Creative. Wayfind Collective, becoming better humans, one curiosity-filled conversation at a time.